Learn more about the weather than you ever wanted to. Twister Talk. Twister Talk with Gary and Sue starts now.
Tornado's crossing the road right in front of us. It's tearing something apart right now. Big time flash. Shoot, I think a semi got flipped. Are you okay? Let's pray. Hey, there's big rail cover. We gotta go, sir. Hang in the cut.
Gary, we're in Newcastle right now, and north of us, the thing is still on the ground. There's lots of debris in the air right now. Lots.
You need to be below ground shelter.
I hate Oklahoma.
Right now, Oklahoma may be pretty safe compared to other parts of the country that are getting hammered. All kinds of crazy.
Yeah. I mean, we're taping this on Wednesday, the 4th of June, and, twisters are attacking St. Louis again, and that's the last thing those people need. And you got all kinds of crazy windstorms. And
has to do with the Cardinals. I'm not sure what that St. Louis it could be. Could be. I told you to trade that guy, but anyway.
Yeah.
It's Twister Talk. I'm Gary.
I'm Sue.
And we're here again on the show. But today we're going to talk, give you an update on what's happening in Canada again.
For some reason, the place is on fire. I don't know.
Every couple of years now, it seems to be a barbecue up there. And I tell you, Sue, the last couple of years, I think every summer we've talked about, or even in the fall, we've talked about major fire issues.
Yep.
Whether in California, whether we've had volcanic eruptions in Hawaii, but we've had fires in the Midwest. We've had everywhere. It's been really crazy.
Yeah, they've actually already had some nasty fires in California this year.
Again.
Yeah.
And after how they rang out the year last year with that was, amazing. And so we're happening again. As of this moment, more than 25,000 people in Canada evacuated as wildfires rage and air quality suffers. Around 17,000 people living in Manitoba and central Canada have been relocated, and the province's premier warned the next few days were absolutely critical amid hot, dry weather and stretched resources. Now, more than 25,000 people across central Canada have been forced to leave their homes to escape dozens of wildfires that have reduced air quality and visibility there and in some U.S. states along the border. We'll talk about that in a minute because the fires are very widespread throughout Canada, and we'll talk about the air quality issues also as we go through our sharing here. Again, around 17,000 people have been relocated in Manitoba, declared a state of emergency last week. That state of emergency is still going on even today on this Wednesday. Now, 8,000 in neighboring Saskatchewan and roughly 1,300 from Alberta, Canada, have been also evacuated, but they're still saying more could follow. Let's focus in for a minute on what's happening in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, right now it seems like most of what that's happening in Saskatchewan is they're having problems from all the smoke, which of course varies considerably from hour to hour.
Right.
And of course, smoke is very detrimental to your health. Mm-hmm. The premier of Saskatchewan, his name is Scott Moe, he blamed recent hot, dry weather, warning that resources to fight the fires and support the evacuees are stretched thin. Their big hope now is for a changing weather pattern and hopefully soaking rains from the north. More than 5,000 people have been forced to flee from, are you ready for this? Flin Flon, around 400 miles northwest of the provincial capital of Winnipeg. I think Canada is right up there with Australia for colorful town names.
Yeah,
Flin Flon is right up there.
Yep.
Fire crews have struggled to control the fire threatening the town, which started a week ago near Creighton, but then quickly crossed into Manitoba. Right now, more than 90 wildfires are out of control in Canada.
Wow. Now, King Charles has visited Canada, and he delivered an address or a speech written by government headed by Mark Carney. And he says Canada will remain strong and free despite facing unprecedented challenges.
And being on fire.
That's right. Water bombers have been intermittently grounded due to heavy smoke and drone incursion.
Yeah, people with drones, would you please keep them to yourselves?
Yeah, these are not government drones or checking. These are drones that are going, I want to get it on CNN or on my blog.
I think we need to remember last year in California where the Canadian government sent a couple of fire bombers there, mm-hmm. and one of them was actually damaged by a drone.
What can you say?
I know.
It's amazing. Now, the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Forest Service deployed air tankers to Alberta and said it would send roughly 150 firefighters and equipment to Canada. Unhealthy air quality levels were recorded Sunday in North Dakota and small areas of Montana, Minnesota, and South Dakota. Now, the Illinois, Chicago area has been hit hard with some of that air quality issues.
Yes, very nasty.
Yeah, it's been really an issue there. That is all according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Air Now page, which is an air. If you want to go to Air Now, you can look up airnow.com, and they'll give you the latest breakdown on not only the fires, but the weather affecting it or the heat problem. The air quality problems and everything. Very good site. You have to kind of navigate around a little bit, but definitely worth taking a look at if you want to get some get the trivia thing going down on that. You'll find out everything going on now. U.S. National Weather Service meteorologist Brian Jackson said people could expect at least a couple more rounds of Canadian smoke to come through over the U.S. during the next week. We'll talk about that again in just a moment. Separately, a fire in the U.S. border state of Idaho burned 50 acres and prompted road closures, according to Idaho State Police. That happened over the weekend. Basically, the furthest south right now is Winkler, Manitoba, which is 12 miles from the U.S. border. That's also been evacuated. So now the fire season starts in May in Canada and runs basically through November. So needless to say, this is sadly I think it's still going to be round one of what's coming up.
That's what I'm afraid of, and I'm afraid we're going to see it again south of the border.
Yeah, definitely.
Possibly in the upper western states, places like North and South Dakota and Montana, and then possibly on into Oregon and California again.
Yeah, the rains have been sparse there so far this spring. So wait and see. Now, Sue, let's go a little more detail what's happening in Saskatchewan, because that seems to be one of the hardest hit areas. Of course, along with Manitoba, that seems to be one that really has been causing some issues.
Yeah, the estimated number of wildfire evacuees now is approaching 15,000. The premier of Saskatchewan, and I just mentioned his name. His name is Scott Moe. He addressed reporters yesterday, June the 3rd, from the wildfire firefighting base, which is just north of Prince Albert. And, he expressed great dismay about this. He said, Many families are leaving their homes, and they don't know if they're going to see it again.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely right. Right now, as of yesterday, June the 3rd, there were 20 active wildfires in Saskatchewan, 5 uncontained. Unfortunately, in the small town of Lorong, a vital piece of firefighting infrastructure was destroyed, namely the communications building at the airport that serves as the principal northern air tanker base. Now, that's very unfortunate. The good thing is that no firefighting aircraft were damaged and nobody was injured, but right now they're trying to bring in a comms trailer.
Wow. So that's hindering work too. I'm sure there have been power failures and just about everything else you can add on top of that. Of course, in many, I forget, Sue. I know it's literally over 30,000 acres in size and still burning in parts of these major fires.
That doesn't surprise me. The Premier Scott Moe said that a couple of months ago he thought it was going to be a pretty typical fire season, and then it didn't rain.
It basically rain has been well below average in the northern U.S. Bordering Canada and Canada itself since basically February.
Yeah, here's a statistic. In fact, we just talked about the town of Lorong, which is in Saskatchewan. And by the way, if I'm mispronouncing that, please let me know. Mm-hmm. They have received only 18 millimeters of rain over the past 3 months, a time they normally get 100 millimeters. Prince Albert, also in Saskatchewan, has seen only 8 millimeters this spring compared to a normal 85. There is rain forecast for next weekend, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough to make a difference.
Yeah, from what I'm seeing here, so basically the showers they say it could fall, a lot of it said it will still be pretty scattered. It won't be, a big general rain coverage over the whole area, which is really what they need. You actually need almost a week of rain off and on for over a week. Not flooding rains, but good steady rains over a week to eliminate that. That's not going to happen. And
some of these fires have been serious enough that firefighters have had to pull back.
Yep.
There's been too much smoke to fly firefighting aircraft. It's really a problem.
It has been awful, and we want to give you a scope of what's happening. Now, we're going to post this online on our Facebook page. We want to give you an idea of what's happening. The latest from the Canadian government, and this is a wildfire map update, and we'll be posting it along with the key. Now, there's still a good part of eastern Canada that's in what they call the blue area, which means there's plenty of moisture. They've had plenty of rain this year, and so the fire danger is considerably lower than from west. Basically, you go from Lake Superior to the west, everything north of Lake Superior as far as Canada, along the North Dakota, Montana, Idaho, and those states, and Washington. Guess what? That's where all the big fires are. In fact, a lot of that area, especially along the U.S. border, North Dakota and Montana, so a lot of that is in the red area, which is extreme, and that's where the worst fires are right now.
Basically, if you're in Western Ontario, if you're in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, or British Columbia, those are all high fire risk areas, and wildfires are burning almost in all of them.
Yeah, it's very sad. Now, there are areas surrounding that are in high risk and moderate risk for fires, and there are fires going on there. Some of those have been contained in the last couple of days. They're not all. There's still many out of control, but some of the smaller ones have been contained in those areas. And also, there has been not too much of a fire danger in regards to parts of north central Canada. Once you get up toward west of Hudson Bay in those areas too, it doesn't seem to be quite as bad there. There have been fires, but they've not been nearly as devastating or disastrous as what's happening right now. And of course, you get up toward the Alaskan border, it's pretty quiet there. But we'll talk about something about Alaska in just a moment that took me by surprise when I read it. But now also you've got people from all over that part of Canada coming together saying, hey, we need to key our efforts better. And one of those is the First Nation group, or the Native American groups of Canada. So go ahead, what's going on with that? Yeah,
the First Nations groups in Manitoba have been dealing with this disaster, and the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, Kyra Wilson, has been basically asking for more equipment and more manpower. One thing he brought up is that the fires are out of control, and in some places all they have are two fire trucks and garden hoses. So they don't even have enough ability to soak the roofs of their houses to try to keep them from catching on fire. Some of these communities, they've evacuated all but the essential people, and basically he says the First Nation people say people are trying hard, but there just aren't enough of them, which is a real problem.
Well, if you have 1,000 people but one hose, you ain't gonna get the job done, and that seems to be the issue. Some people. I've talked to a few people offline about this and said, why can't they be better organized? Well, the thing is, when you have a drought-stricken year and the fires get going, these fires don't just Monday, Sue, the fire was over here. Then on Friday, it moved about a mile here. No, these things go through. They race along the countryside, and they'll race at 30 to 40 miles an hour at times.
And something I think people in America forget sometimes is Canada is a very large country that, compared to the United States, is reasonably sparsely populated.
Right.
So not only do you have wide areas that can burn, you also have fewer people and fewer resources to put them out.
That's a good point. Yeah, the population of Canada is well below ours. As far as the whole country. And as you get further north you get, the less the population are. In fact, even Saskatchewan and areas like that, Manitoba, there are cities of concentrated population, but a lot of that's just wide open.
Oh, yeah.
Or just small towns. There's not a lot going on there of any, you're not going to, you can drive one of those places, you can drive an hour and not see anybody. Of course, in Australia, you can drive 6 hours and not see anybody.
Yeah, if you're familiar with Montana or North Dakota, a lot of Canada is like that.
Yeah.
And you can drive for a long period and not see a whole lot other than wheat fields.
That's true. In fact, mentioning Alaska real quickly, in British Columbia, guess what? Part of the Alaska Highway has been closed because of that. Ramping up in the British Columbia area, those fires, as the Province Wildfire Service warns of hot, dry, and windy conditions in the forecast. And it says the northeastern corner of the province, which were mostly active and out of control blazes in BC, are currently located. However, there are blazes to the west, and they are affecting the part of the route of the Alaskan Highway. For those of you who may not know, the Alaskan Highway basically goes from Washington State
Up to Alaska.
Through parts of Western Canada along the Pacific
It is said
Ocean.
to be an incredibly scenic drive.
I have a friend of mine who lives in Alaska now. He's from Houston. He lives in Alaska, and he said when they moved there, him and his wife Marcia drove up there and said it's an unbelievable
I'll
drive going up the Alaska Highway. Of course, he goes, but Gary, it paled in Denali. I said, well, I think everything. You go to Denali, I think everything pales.
Everything pales.
It's a
compared to that.
majestic view of Denali National Park and everything. But anyway, so you've got traffic, you've got lives being affected. There really hasn't been much in the way, quote, of death or injury tolls, and I think that may just because of the fact there's just too much going on right now to break it all down. I'm sure there have been injuries, and sadly there probably will be deaths.
I would think especially possibly with the air quality.
Yeah.
For people who are, unwell, people who have immune system issues, people who are older, breathing that smoke is not good for you.
No, it's not. In fact, I want to take a look at that right now. And Sue and I are looking at the latest air quality map from the
It's pretty exciting.
From the Environmental Protection Agency, and it basically shows that everything basically from Minnesota, Iowa, parts of Missouri on to the east is pretty much dealing with some areas of air quality and smoke issues. In fact, here in Ohio, if you look out, getting up this morning, looking out the window, the sun was out, but you can tell the haze, and the haze is a little different, and that's that milky sky, and that's
it's
part
not,
of the fire.
It's not nearly as bad as it was 2 years ago, though.
No, much worse.
Because 2 years ago, the smoke actually came down to ground level, and you could actually smell it.
Yes. So far, that has not happened yet. Now, there have been some reports of some of that in southern Ohio.
Oh, really?
There have been a couple of reports of that. Nothing significant, but they can testify. The winds have been lighter there, and some of the smoke has settled. And of course, north of Chicago and into Wisconsin, where it's been the worst.
It's really thick there.
It's been very bad, and they're talking about the air quality issues have been significant, not only in Canada but here. So we'll give you a quick rundown of what's going on with that. I'll kind of lead it off, and then Sue will jump in with me on that. Air quality has been deemed hazardous in parts of the United States. Here in Ohio today, the risk for us, Sue, was low to moderate. In other words, if you have asthma or breathing issues like COPD, being outside could be a problem. But then again, Sue, it's 89 degrees out here, so that may have more effect on you than the smoke. Although the smoke could do that.
It's definitely a little warm out there today.
Yeah, it is warm. Exposure to wildfire smoke has been found to cause early death and respiratory issues since the 2024 report from Health Canada. So we're going to talk about what's going on in Canada first. And air quality warnings have been issued by the Environmental and Climate Change Canada throughout Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Ontario. Now, 53 communities in southeastern Manitoba, for example, have received alerts about wildfire smoke causing poor air quality and reduced visibility. Well, if you've seen any video from those areas, you stick your head out the window. Yeah. It's there. It's very, very, very real. The warnings state that conditions in some Manitoba regions are improving as the smoke drifts eastward and away from the affected communities, but it's expected to linger in areas like Flin Flon and Crosslawn. There you go, where local wildfires are still evading control. Now, a number of special air quality statements were also issued from a dozen communities in northwestern Ontario for those groups. Early Monday morning, the statements warned that wildfire smoke was expected to remain in the area for the next several days. And Sue, how are we being impacted by this in the U.S.?
Well, over the weekend, smoke has been steadily drifting south over the upper Midwest, impacting so far northwestern Wisconsin, eastern Nebraska, northeastern North Dakota, and most of Minnesota. I heard a very interesting comment today from an astronaut on the space station who has been watching this going on, and she said that the thing that struck her is when you first look at it, the smoke just looks like clouds, and then you realize it has a distinct yellowish tinge, and it's not clouds. And so the astronauts have been watching this moving towards us. A statewide air quality alert has been issued for Minnesota until Wednesday.
Wow. Wednesday evening, this evening sometime, right?
Yeah, well, that's actually today.
Yep.
But it just wouldn't surprise me if that actually is extended, Gary.
It might. Fortunately, there is a cold front moving through these areas tomorrow and Friday, so that will help some, and it will shift the winds a little bit. But the point is, it's going to be shifting the winds out of the north-northwest. Well, guess where the fires are? To the north-northwest into Canada. So that's where the air is going to be coming. So I'll have to wait and see what happens. Now, the problem is with all this is it doesn't look bad in most of our area at first, but there can be problems with people, even with thousands of feet in the air. There can be problems with people have issues with breathing and asthma and COPD. And according to the Environment and Climate Change Canada, the people who are in the highest risk of facing health impacts due to low quality air quality caused by the wildfire smoke includes seniors, young children, pregnant women, people who work outdoors, people involved in strenuous activities outdoors, people with chronic health conditions, and when AQHI values are the moderate to high risk levels, those are avoided to reduce or completely avoid strenuous outdoor activities.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny. I looked at my weather on my phone this morning because for some reason I do check the weather now and then. I can't imagine why. And it noted that running was poor today. The conditions for running were poor. And I'm going, the sun's out. It's not too hot. And then I realized, the air quality.
Yeah, air quality is really bad over Ohio today. Now, Sue, what are the long-term effects about wildfire smoke?
The long-term effects can actually include increasing the risk of infections like pneumonia. It can make COVID worse, which nobody wants to make COVID worse, trust me.
No.
It can even cause ear infections in children, which I did not know. Interestingly enough, it recommends portable air cleaners with HEPA filters as a way to remove smoke particles from indoor air. So if you are susceptible, you might want to look into getting an air filter with a HEPA filter on it. Obviously, keeping the windows closed and running the air conditioning also helps a lot. But overall, exposure to wildfire smoke, exposure to wildfire smoke can worsen pre-existing asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and of course can cause premature mortality.
Yep. Well, you're breathing in those particulates, and they're going to do something to you no matter. Well, I can't see them where they're real tiny. Well, they're still
doesn't matter. They're still dangerous.
They can get into your lungs and coat the lining of your lungs with soot and smoke and ash, and guess what?
Oh, yeah.
You start having significant issues.
Yeah, you have significant problems from that.
Yeah. They're talking about that. Again, the report concludes, again, that exposure to wildfire smoke can worsen pre-existing asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So basically, if you've got any heart or lung issues, this is going to affect you greatly. No matter where you are, as long as you may not be in Canada, but you're in the northern tier states, and everywhere from Lake Superior down to Lake Erie, you're running the risk of
definitely use caution. Try to stay indoors. Run the air conditioning. If you want to, get an air filter with a HEPA filter, and just kind of chill for the next several days.
Yep, we have one here at the old command bunker. We have a HEPA air filter, which works very well. I have to put a new filter in it, but it works well and does the job. So makes the show a little easier to do. Again, be smart. You say, well, it doesn't look that bad. Well, it can be that bad, even though, quote, it doesn't look that bad. Looks can be deceiving. And if you have asthma or any breathing issues, you could wind up, if you're trying to push yourself, you could wind up getting pushed back fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So
you
want to
don't
be
want
careful.
that to happen. So definitely our thoughts are with our friends in Canada.
Absolutely. Just a very sad situation. Hopefully there's some relief. There is some rain. Maybe next week into the weekend. How much yet, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But still, temperatures are going to stay warm in a lot of parts of the country. Most places are going to be anywhere from 10 to 15 degrees above normal this weekend and the next week. So it's not cooling down any great shakes. It will cool down in some areas, which will help. But a lot of Canada is going to stay under the fire gun next week. Is not going to change. Hopefully that something will happen to get a lot of this stuff done, but you have to take a deep breath because folks, it's just really sad. And
I just hope it's not a precursor of what's going to happen here.
No, I hope not either. So There's our look at what's happening in Canada, the wildfires, the impact across the country. Our thoughts and prayers with you up there, our neighbors in the north, and hang in there. The rest of you, breathe right. For Twister Talk, I'm Gary.
I'm Sue.
Talk to you later.